Hello, my friends. It's Jenny from Edrienia Extrasensory Elevation, and in this video, let us talk about the spiritual ego. Spiritual ego is one of those worst and dangerous positions to be in this life, especially when we talk about religions and spirituality. And throughout history, we have learned a lot from this group and how many bad things and evil things they have done to the world and to humanity. They were responsible for the mass killings that the world has ever seen throughout history, especially in the process of colonization. They were strong actors in that process in colonizing other countries throughout the world. They were also strongly part of stealing other people's land and also the destructions of many cultures and heritage. I'm just sharing that with you just to give you a few examples. And the purpose of this video is not to convince you. You don't have to believe me. You can do your own research and see the evidence for yourself. And in Jesus' time, in his context, the spiritual ego, they held various positions of power and influence. And the funny thing is, these kind of people, Jesus did not want to associate with them. He didn't want to hang around them or spend time with them. And he tried to avoid them as he could. And he ran away from them, from the spiritual ego. In fact, they are the ones who were responsible for the death of Jesus. Even throughout the history of the church and Christianity, for those of you who are watching, if you have invested a lot of time studying and reading about the history of Christianity and church, there are many examples of the spiritual ego and how many bad things and evil things they have done to the history of humanity and the world. And they are still hanging around today. They are still around us today. Although some of them, they appear in a very noble and very humble way in the way they present themselves and the way they show up in the world. But inside, they are still the same people who have existed throughout history. Even in Jesus' time, the history of the church, they are the same people. And they are still with us here today. And today, they have a lot of power and influence. They influence our politics. When we talk about businesses, they have a lot of power and influence. And you name it, and other aspects of how we live in societies. And it's not complicated to see them. You can see them through their behavior, their attitude towards others, the kind of lifestyle that they are living, and the way of life they are living. You can see them. It's obvious. When you compare their lives to the life of Jesus, the kind of teachings that Jesus did in his time, and also his ministry and work in the world. But the spiritual ego, this group of people, they always talk highly of how spiritual they are, the way they dressed up, They dress up in a very sophisticated way, and they tell others, if you wanted to be spiritual, this is the way how you look. They like to impress others of how spiritual and impress others of how many scriptures, of how many Bible verses they know by heart, try to show off how much they know about the text. They always like to talk down about other people. They like to use the Bible to pass and whip other people with the Bible. They like to talk about other people's sins and tell them they're going to go to hell, but themselves, they like to do that a lot. They like to live extravagant lifestyles, so wealthy lifestyle. But I'm just sharing that with you just to give you some examples, which is not that complicated. The life and work of Jesus speak for itself, and you can compare that. And that way, you can be able to discern and identify who are the spiritual ego in our time. So in other words, their behavior and lifestyle is the opposite when we talk about Jesus, and as we have studied and read his life for ourselves. It's not complicated to see that. It's obvious to see that. And they love to talk about, they are preaching about the gospel of Jesus Christ. They talk about their teaching. But their actions and the way they live their life, as I've said, it's the opposite. In other words, they have created their own Jesus. It's not the historical Jesus or the Jesus of the Bible. They have created their own Jesus to justify their positions, to justify their lifestyles and the kind of behavior that they have. As you compare it to the Jesus, for example, in the New Testament, it is not what they have claimed to be. They have created their own Jesus. And as I have mentioned earlier, you don't have to believe me. That is not the purpose of this video, that you believe me. No, you don't have to believe me. I'm sharing this to encourage you and to urge you to do your own studies, do your own research, and look, the evidence is available out there. You can look it up and see it up for yourself. Because for the many years I've been in church ministry, this is one of the weaknesses I have seen. There's quite a lot of people, they don't like to do their own research. They don't like to seek the truth for themselves. They would rather rely on somebody else to do that for them. And that is why a lot of people have been led blindly. And that is why many spiritual egos have been able to brainwash, indoctrinate, you name it, many followers, because they know the majority of their members or their followers, they don't like to seek the truth for themselves. They don't like to seek the evidence for themselves. They would rather just following the spiritual ego blindly and just swallow everything they have to say. They just follow. I'm not saying here that ego is all that bad. No, please don't confuse and take the message I'm sharing here wrongly. No, ego is part of our human nature. It's part of us. And there are good things in life that we have to use our ego. There are places and circumstances for that. But when somebody or a number of people, they have taken their ego to the extreme, and as we have seen throughout history and even in our time, there have been many bad things and evil things. It's because some have taken their ego to the extreme. And we don't have to look any further and look elsewhere. We just look at Jesus' life and ministry on earth. In the conclusion of his life and ministry, Jesus picked the criminal and take with him to paradise. He did not choose or take the spiritual ego with him. No. In other words, Jesus was saying, you need to spend more time here on earth to get to learn, to get to change your lives. And maybe in my next coming, maybe by that time, you'll be good enough to take you with me to paradise. With that, my friends, I'm signing off. It's me, Senny, from Edrienia Extrasensory Education. But I will see you again in my next video.